now it's time to get a macro perspective on what else is happening around us in the world. For this morning's World Deconstructed, we turn to Belarus. In a U.S. brokered deal, President Lukashenko freed husband of an exiled Belarus opposition leader. We talk about the latest release and further implications with David Tizzard joining us via Zoom. Good morning, David.
Dobry ranetsi, Lena. Good morning. It's great to see you. And when we got songs back on Monday morning, that's a wonderful thing, but I didn't expect them to be singing about tuna mayonnaise.
None of us did, and our producer is very insistent that we play that song. I'm glad it tickled you. David, take us to Belarus. It's an important turn of events, but perhaps we stopped paying attention to Belarus on our world news headlines. We just didn't have enough of a focal point, but now we do, and we wanted to pivot our attention there.
Okay, first, the most important thing about Belarus is that I am older than Belarus by a decade, just about. Belarus was founded following the fall of Soviet Union, and it became officially a country September 19th, 1991. It's a rather big country geographically. It has Moscow, Russia to the east, and Ukraine to the south. Despite its geographic position, however, it's not in the European Union, and a lot of that is related to its human rights issues. So despite being pretty close to Europe, right on the doorstep, closer than Turkey, perhaps, it's not part of it. The big story coming out of Belarus over the last week or so is that 14 political prisoners have been released from Belarusian prisons, moved to Lithuania. And the most important, the most prominent, we should say, was the former opposition leader, Sergei Tikhanovsky. He'd spent around 5 years behind bars. And there are very emotional scenes of him being released, being reunited with his wife, who is now also in exile in Lithuania as the opposition leader in exile, and seeing them embrace each other on camera was a very moving and emotional moment, not just for the couple, but for the people of Belarus that support freedom, or they support democracy in a country that's been led by a leader since roughly 1994, I think. So having these two be reunited, having the future of Belarusian democratic opposition coming together was a very powerful moment for the people of the country.
It's clearly been shared over and over again on social media, this warm embrace, about a 10 to 15 second hug. 10 to 15 minutes. That would be a different kind of story. Now, who are the political prisoners released from Belarus? I mean, which countries did they come from? Because you mentioned 14 political prisoners. And then maybe we can have more context as to who exactly Sergei Tikhanovsky is. He's a pro-democracy activist. I understand he had his own YouTube channel. He tried to run in the 2020 presidential election himself.
He did. So he was Sergei Tikhanovsky. He was known across Belarus, as you say, as an outspoken video blogger. And he's cool. He would travel around the country. So he didn't just do this from computer screens, but he was out shaking hands, meeting people. And his big catchphrase was to stop the cockroach. And that was what he called on citizens to do. And he was making a mocking reference to the country's leader, Lukashenko. So traveling the country, speaking directly with people and challenging the state's narrative. He announced in 2020 his intention to run for president. And he was a very popular figure. And almost immediately after announcing that he would run for president, he was arrested without warning, without letters, without notice, without a criminal trial, anything like that. He was simply taken away. And then a few months later in 2021, he was sentenced to 18 years in prison for allegedly inciting violence and unrest in the country. He's been on record. I've seen some English translations that some people have kindly done of his time in jail these 5 years, and it's absolutely outrageous what has happened to him. So he disappeared. His wife then took his position as leader of the opposition, trying to keep that support going. But she had to flee. She had to flee to Lithuania to keep herself safe. So, on coming out, Sergei Tikhanovsky, he was almost unrecognizable from the figure that he once was. He was a very tall, stocky man, burly, very confident coming out. He with his head fully shaved. By prison guards, obviously. He was also very, very thin, jackets almost falling off of him. He looked almost sort of like an NBA player or a basketball player, but not in the good way. And it's crazy to think how a man that was almost positioned to be the next leader of Belarus found himself with an 18-year prison sentence. And that likely would have been served were it not for developments that have taken place to get him out.
We'll get to the developments, but David, maybe you want to make a point about the remaining political prisoners that are still behind bars.
Yeah, reports say that there's over 1,100 political prisoners that remain in Belarusian jails, and the experience they have there is just heartbreaking. And this is one of the reasons why Belarus is not in the European Union, and why world figures, leaders don't go to Belarus and they don't meet the government there, because they don't recognize the elections that take place, and they fundamentally disagree with what happens to the people there. When he was released, he was giving this one speech. It wasn't a speech. He was having a conversation with some people, speaking into a microphone. And Sergei Tikhanovsky, he said that one of the hardest things, and he was almost breaking down and crying while he was saying this, that the torture, first of all, being taken away with no letters, no lawyers, no phone calls, no contact with the outside world. There's just no sort of due process. There's nothing. You're there just living your life. You're doing something. And this has also happened to university professors, to journalists, to students. And then all of a sudden you're gone, and you find yourself in this kind of institution, inside this prison, inside this gulag, and you're forced to clean just sort of 4, 5, 6 times a day your small cell. And if you don't clean, then you'll be taken off to solitary confinement. And Sergei Tikhanovsky, he said the hardest thing, that he was forced to do this with no contact with the outside world. He didn't know how long he would be in there. He was told 18 years he would be doing this, just cleaning a small room. And he found one of the hardest things, that while he was doing this, he saw just, what he described as murderers just sitting there watching TV, enjoying himself, while innocent people were forced to just scrub concrete for no reason. He said that even criminals, which we are not, he said, deserve human rights. And he really bemoaned the inhumane treatment. And I think it's probably taken a psychological toll on the people that have been released, but also, more importantly, the thousands that remain behind bars in Belarus.
David, maybe we must highlight what was in it for Alexander Lukashenko to allow the freeing of 14 political prisoners. Surely he has something to gain.
Yeah, absolutely. So Alexander Lukashenko, he's sometimes known as Europe's last dictator. He's been president of Belarus since 1994. It's a really long time. And during that period, during his reign, we've seen suppression of political oppression. We've seen opposition, I should say, control over the media, the judiciary, widespread human rights abuses. It was through Belarus that Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine. And in 2020, when Sergei Tikhanovsky, he was running for president, Lukashenko again claimed victory in this rather fraudulent election, it must be said by many European observers, what they've said. Now, for him, this doesn't mean perhaps he's getting sentimental or nice in his old age. It was more about optics. His country has been frozen out of the West since that 2020 election, never recognized internationally. This has been exacerbated by his support for Russia in their invasion of Ukraine. And it's not just support, it's using his country as a platform to do it. The sanctions are very hard. And so what he got out of this is he got to host a US envoy. He got somebody from America to come and see him, to give him a a handshake and a hug in his office. And in doing that, it sort of gave him some legitimacy. It gave him a way back into the international world. Sergei Tikhanovsky's wife, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, she actually wrote on Twitter, "My husband is free," and then she went on to thank US President Donald Trump for making this happen. Mr. Kellogg, Keith Kellogg, the US Special Envoy who went to Belarus to shake hands, and all the European allies to get the husband released. So the weird thing to think about this is there was a lot of work done by President Trump to get this person out, it seems.
And finally, David, for Sergei Tikhanovsky, I'm sure he will have possibly other sit-downs with journalists. He won't be silenced. But what about his political future in Belarus?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just trying to get back into normal life after 5 years of solitary confinement and that treatment. It's clear the physical and psychological effects. But he remains determined, and so does his wife, that there are people still behind bars and that this should not happen. It's not necessarily about being president or democracy. It's about, the tens of thousands of people that have been in prison for political reasons. Something needs to be done about them. And what's happening is that many people like Tikhanovsky and his wife, they only discover about this either when they're imprisoned or when they reach the Lithuania border and they get out of the country. So it's about drawing attention to this story. I'm sure as it travels around the world and Sergei Tikhanovsky's release, it will help in some way, I'm sure. And
it seems Mr. Tikhanovsky has once again urged Donald Trump to help other prisoners be freed as well. David, thank you so much for taking us to Belarus this morning. Happy Monday.
Thank you for the tuna mayonnaise. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Goodbye. If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.